Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if your brain processes information differently than others, especially when it comes to understanding the world around you? This new study dives deep into that very question, looking at prediction errors in autism. So, the big idea behind this research is something called predictive coding. Think of your brain as constantly making predictions about what is going to happen next based on everything it has learned. When what actually happens matches its prediction, great, but when it doesn't match, that is a prediction error. Some theories suggest that in autism spectrum condition, or ASC, there might be differences in how these predictions are made or how these prediction errors are handled. This could mean that people with autism might rely more on what is coming in from their senses, the bottom-up input, rather than what their brain already expects, the top-down knowledge. This imbalance, if it exists, could help explain some of the diverse characteristics seen in autism. Scientists have even started to map out prediction networks in the brain of neurotypical individuals using brain scanning technology. But nobody had really done a big comparison for people with autism. That is where this study comes in. The researchers wanted to see if there is a pattern in brain activity related to prediction and prediction errors when comparing autistic individuals to neurotypical individuals. They looked at lots of previous studies that used functional magnetic resonance imaging, or fMRI, which measures brain activity by detecting changes in blood flow, and also studies using magnetoencephalography, or MEG, which measures magnetic fields used to detect brain activity. They weren't just looking for studies that explicitly mentioned prediction or prediction error. Instead, they used a broad search to find any studies where the task or the way the data was analyzed implicitly involved how the brain makes predictions or deals with unexpected events. They sifted through thousands of studies and carefully selected the ones that met their criteria. These criteria included having both autistic and neurotypical participants, using fMRI or MEG, and having experimental tasks that involved forming or violating predictions. They then divided these experiments into two main groups: those that showed stronger brain activation in autistic individuals compared to neurotypical ones, and those that showed stronger activation in neurotypical individuals compared to autistic ones. They used a cool technique called activation likelihood estimation, or AL, which is a way to statistically combine findings from multiple studies to see if there is a consistent area of the brain that shows up across them. It is like looking for where the hotspots of activity are when many studies point to the same brain region for a particular task. They also importantly kept track of studies that found no significant differences between the groups, which they called null results, because that is also important information. So, what did they find? When they looked at the experiments where autistic individuals showed more brain activity than neurotypical individuals, there wasn't any consistent pattern or convergence of these differences. It means no specific brain region reliably showed stronger activity in autistic people related to these prediction tasks. However, when they looked at the experiments where neurotypical individuals showed more brain activity than autistic individuals, they found something interesting. There was a convergence of these differences in a specific area of the brain, a cluster in the medial frontal gyrus and the cingulate gyrus, which overlaps with the dorsal part of the anterior cingulate cortex, or DAC. This area, the DAC, is pretty important. The researchers noted that it is known to be involved in things like monitoring for errors, assessing uncertainty, and keeping track of important information related to our goals. In simpler terms, it is like a brain region that helps us figure out when something unexpected happens or when we need to pay closer attention, because things might be changing. The study suggests that in neurotypical individuals, this DAC area tends to show a stronger response when outcomes conflict with expectations or previous learning. Or, put another way, under these conditions, the DAC activity in autistic individuals didn't differentiate as much between expected and unexpected events. This finding aligns with some other research that suggests people with autism might have a reduced ability to distinguish between expected and unexpected outcomes. Now, what does this all mean? The researchers are cautious, and that is a good thing in science. They found that in neurotypical individuals, there is a stronger engagement of the DAC when predictions are violated, which is consistent with its role in error monitoring. The fact that this difference was less pronounced in autistic individuals is intriguing. It could support the idea of altered predictions or prediction errors in autism. However, they rightly point out that brain activity alone doesn't tell us the exact why or how. For example, this difference could mean that autistic individuals have consistently precise prediction errors, whether something is expected or not. It could imply that they have broader prior beliefs, so when those weaker beliefs are violated, the error signal isn't as strong. Both of those explanations, despite being quite different, could lead to a similar pattern of brain activation difference. The study also acknowledges a large proportion of null results, meaning many studies found no significant differences between autistic and neurotypical individuals. This, combined with the relatively small number of experiments that did show differences, means we need to be careful not to overstate the findings. The FSN analysis, which is a way to check how robust the results are, showed that the found cluster wasn't super strong. This is an important reminder that while they found a pattern, it is not an ironclad conclusion. One of the biggest limitations mentioned is the small number of studies and experiments they could include. Think of it like trying to draw a clear picture with only a few puzzle pieces. With more pieces, the picture gets clearer. They also noted that the studies included participants of various ages, which adds complexity as brain development and differences can change over time. So, while they've identified an interesting brain region, the DAC see and a potential pattern of difference in how autistic individuals process unexpected information, the picture isn't fully complete yet. So, in a nutshell, this meta-analysis points to differences in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, a key area for monitoring errors and uncertainty between neurotypical individuals and those with autism. This suggests that people with autism might process unexpected events differently. However, the limited amount of data and the presence of many null results mean we need more research to confirm these findings and understand the underlying mechanisms. I think this study does a fantastic job of taking complex theories about how the brain works, like predictive coding, and trying to find concrete evidence in the brain patterns of autistic individuals. The focus on the DAXI is really interesting because it is such a central hub for processing unexpectedness. The fact that the NT-ASE finding was clearer than the ASE-CNT finding might tell us something about the nature of these differences. It could be that when things don't follow expectations, neurotypical brains are more distinctively activating this error monitoring system, while autistic brains might have a more muted or different kind of response. However, like the researchers themselves said, we need to be cautious. The small sample size of experiments is a real hurdle. Imagine trying to solve a mystery with only a few clues. You might get a hint, but you are far from solving the case. The high number of null results is also significant. It suggests that the differences, if they exist, might be subtle, context-dependent, or perhaps not consistently captured by current fMRI paradigms. What is next? Clearly, we need more studies specifically designed to probe prediction and prediction error in autism. These studies should ideally include not just brain imaging, but also behavioral tasks and computational modeling. This way, we can get a richer understanding of what is happening in the brain and how it relates to observable behavior. For instance, if we can measure how people behave when something unexpected happens and then look at their brain activity, we can start to connect the dots more clearly. Future research could also explore if these differences are present across all types of prediction errors, or if they are specific to certain domains, like social versus non-social predictions. Overall, this is a valuable step in understanding the neural basis of prediction in autism. It opens up questions and points us in the right direction for future investigations. What do you all think about these findings? Does the idea of prediction and prediction errors in autism resonate with anything you've experienced or observed? Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the mind, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science breakdowns, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Thanks for watching!